Two suns rose over the shining palace of Varkos, painting the sky in gold and violet. Every morning, the palace woke slowly, like a giant creature stretching after a long sleep. Servants opened tall glass doors. Silver birds sang. The air smelled of warm stone and sweet flowers. In the middle of this beauty walked a single human commander, Rian Hale. He walked with calm steps, wearing only light armor, not the heavy shining metal that the alien guards wore. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. People whispered when they saw him. Some were curious. Some were suspicious. But Rian walked as if none of their eyes mattered. He had only one duty: protect the Queen. Queen Serenia of Varkos was loved by her people. She ruled gently, spoke softly, and carried a sadness in her eyes that only a few ever understood. To Rian, she was the first alien who treated him not as a stranger, but as an equal. Every time he stood beside her throne, he remembered the day she first chose him. "You humans," she had said with a small smile, "carry courage like fire in your hearts. I need someone who burns like that." He never forgot those words. That day, standing near her again, he felt the same warmth. She wore a long silver robe that shimmered like flowing water. Her hair, dark and smooth, fell over her shoulders like a river at night. But her eyes, soft, bright, thoughtful, were what Rian always noticed first. As she stepped into the great balcony for her morning speech, the crowd cheered loudly. Thousands of citizens filled the courtyard below, holding banners and glowing sticks that lit up like star trails. It was supposed to be a peaceful day, a day of unity between races. The Queen spoke with grace. Her voice echoed through the air like music. "My people," she said, "today we celebrate peace, friendship, and the future we build together." Rian scanned the crowd. His eyes were trained, sharp, always moving. He watched shadows, rooftops, small movements, everything. But what troubled him was not the crowd. It was the guards. They stood around the Queen, tall like statues, their armor shaped from living stone. They were supposed to be the strongest, trained from childhood, unbreakable. But today, something was wrong. Several guards kept shifting their weight. One kept glancing at the exits. Another touched his helmet again and again. Rian noticed every detail. His chest tightened. He stepped closer to the Queen, not enough for the crowd to see, but enough for her to feel safer. She glanced at him for a moment, her eyes asking silently, "Is everything all right?" Rian gave a small nod, even if his heart felt heavy. He didn't want to worry her. Then the sound came. A deep rumble from beneath the ground shook the balcony floor. The Queen stopped speaking. Her eyes widened. The crowd gasped. Children screamed. Birds scattered into the sky. Rian's hand went to his weapon instantly. A second explosion followed, louder, closer. Smoke sprayed into the courtyard like a dark wave. The peaceful music was replaced by cries, rushing footsteps, and the sharp echo of breaking metal. And then, something Rian never expected happened. The Queen's elite guards, her trusted warriors, froze. For a moment, they looked as if their minds could not understand what was happening. Then one guard dropped his weapon. Another took a step back. Another ran. Rian stared in disbelief as more and more guards abandoned their posts. They didn't look at the Queen. They didn't shout a warning. They just fled like frightened animals running from a storm. Queen Serenia looked at them with horror. Why are they leaving?" she whispered, voice barely holding together. Rian didn't answer. He didn't have time. Through the smoke, shapes began to move, dark, armed figures advancing quickly toward the balcony. Rian stepped in front of the Queen. Shield up, body tense, eyes focused. He didn't know who the attackers were. He didn't know how many. He didn't know if backup would arrive. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not run. Not today. Ever. Stay behind me. "Your Majesty," he said, voice steady, strong, unshaken. While all the others fled, the humans stayed. And the real story began. The courtyard of Varkos had always been a place of celebration. Even in hard times, people came there to hear their Queen, to feel hope, to believe that light was stronger than darkness. But now, that same courtyard had turned into a battlefield of smoke, fear, and broken voices. Rian kept his shield raised as the first wave of panic spread through the crowd. People pushed each other, trying desperately to escape. Children cried out for their parents. The two suns burned above the scene, but their warm light felt cold and distant, unable to touch the terror below. Queen Serenia held the railing tightly. Her hands trembled, not from fear for herself, but fear for her people. This was supposed to be a day of peace, she whispered, almost to herself. Rian heard her but kept his eyes forward, scanning the smoke. His heart beat like a drum, steady and strong. Even though he knew danger was coming closer each second, he was trained for this. He was ready, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw next. Through the thick smoke, dark shapes moved like shadows with purpose. Their armor glowed with faint green lines. Their helmets covered their faces, making them look less like soldiers and more like ghosts from a nightmare. Serenia stepped back instinctively. "Who are they?" she asked. Rian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he listened to footsteps, to the crackle of weapons warming up, to the pattern of movement only a trained fighter could hear. Finally, he spoke softly. "Not citizens. Not rebels. These are professionals. Assassins." The Queen's breath caught. "Assassins, for me?" Rian nodded once. "And they're coming fast." Behind them, one last guard looked back at the Queen. For a heartbeat, Rian thought the warrior might return to protect her. But then fear took over, and the guard ran, disappearing into the smoke like all the others. Serenia's eyes filled with disbelief. "My own guards abandoned me." Her voice broke, and Rian felt something sharp twist inside him. He stepped closer, strong and steady, the only shield she had left. "They might have left," he said, "but you're not unprotected. I'm here." For a moment, her gaze met his full of pain, shock, and something deeper he couldn't name. She gave a small nod, trusting him completely. Then the attackers reached the base of the balcony. Blaster fire shot upwards, hitting the railings, cracking the stone. Rian pulled the Queen down just in time as a burst of energy passed over their heads, burning a long scar into the wall behind them. He pressed his back against hers, both of them kneeling. "Stay low," he whispered. She clutched the back of his armor. Her fingers shook, but she didn't scream. Even in fear, she held her dignity. "Rian," she whispered, voice trembling. "Why are they doing this? Why today?" Rian didn't know. But he couldn't lie. "Someone wants you gone. And they chose the moment you were most exposed." Another blast hit the balcony. The floor shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Rian moved to shield her completely, his body covering hers as more shots came their way, but a strange calm settled over him. This was where he belonged. This was what he was trained for. He would not fail her. Slowly, he lifted his head toward the edge of the balcony. Through the smoke, he counted the attackers 6, maybe 7. They moved in coordinated lines, spreading out, preparing to climb up. "We can't stay here," Rian said. "They'll surround us." "Then where do we go?" Serenia asked, desperation in her voice. Rian pointed to a side passage behind the Queen's throne, a narrow stairway meant only for royalty, inside the palace. "It's our best chance." The Queen hesitated for a moment, looking at him with a mixture of fear and trust. "You'll protect me, right?" Rian met her gaze. "With my life." He raised her to her feet and guided her toward the passage. But before they could take more than 2 steps, a grappling hook slammed into the balcony. One attacker began climbing up fast, his glowing knife ready. Rian stepped in front of the Queen again. Shield up, sword in hand, the attacker reached the balcony edge. Pulling himself up with terrifying speed, Serenia gasped. Rian took a deep breath. The real fight had begun. The first attacker climbed over the balcony like a silent beast. His armor was black, his breathing cold and mechanical. The green light glowing on his chest made him look more like a machine than a living being. Serenia stepped back until her back touched the wall. Her heart raced, her breath short and trembling. She had never faced an assassin up close. She had never seen death reach for her with such cold confidence. But Rian, he did not move back. He stepped forward. He planted his boots firmly on the cracked balcony floor and raised his damaged shield. His sword, held tightly in his other hand, shook only slightly, not from fear, but from the pain already building in his muscles. The attacker tilted his head as if confused. "A single human stands in my way?" The mechanical voice echoed. Rian did not answer. Words didn't matter. Loyalty did. The attacker charged. The sound of metal striking metal exploded around them. Rian's shield shook violently. The force almost pushed him off his feet, but he held on. He pushed forward, teeth clenched, refusing to give an inch. Serenia watched with wide eyes. She had seen battles before, but never like this. Never one human against trained killers. Never someone fighting not for power, but for her, Rian. She called out, voice tight with fear. "I'm fine," he grunted. Though pain flashed across his face, the attacker swung again. Rian dodged. Barely avoiding the glowing knife that cracked the stone floor where he had stood a second earlier, Rian's heart pounded. He knew he had little time. More attackers were climbing the balcony. This was only the first dot he needed to end this quickly. The assassin lunged again. Rian dropped low, rolling beneath the blade, and slammed his shoulder into the attacker's chest. The hit wasn't strong enough to knock him over, but it shocked him long enough for Rian to strike. With a powerful swing, Rian's sword cut through a weak point in the alien armor. Sparks flew. The attacker staggered back, stumbling, and fell to one knee. Rian moved to finish him, but 3 more grappling hooks shot up over the balcony edge. Serenia covered her mouth. There are more. Rian pulled her behind him again, breathing hard. Sweat and smoke stung his eyes. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, sliding down to his cheek. He knew he couldn't face 3 more at once. Not out here. Not with no cover. Their only chance was inside. Your Majesty, he said urgently. Go to the passage. Now, but go. His voice shook with force, but his eyes were gentle. She could see the pain in them. The weight. The fear he hid behind courage. She nodded, finally moving toward the hidden doorway. But before she reached it, an explosion hit the far end of the balcony. The shockwave threw her forward. Rian darted to her, catching her just before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her tightly. For a moment, everything went silent around them. The queen felt the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. Rian? She whispered, voice trembling. You keep risking your life for me. He looked into her eyes, soft, glowing, terrified eyes. That's my duty, he said. But deep down, it was more than duty. He didn't say it. He COULDN single quotes did. Not now. He helped her stand again. But before they could move, more attackers climbed up the balcony. 4 this time. All armed. All ready to kill. Rian pulled the queen behind a broken pillar. Stay low. Don't move. Shots blasted around them, sending sparks and stone fragments into the air. Rian pushed deeper into the smoke, drawing attention away from her. He fought with everything he had, every skill, every ounce of strength. He blocked 1 strike, dodged another, countered a third. Pain screamed in his body, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Serenia watched his silhouette through the smoke, fighting against figures much larger than him. With every second, fear gripped her heart tighter, not for herself, for him. She pressed her hand over her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. Please. Please don't fall, she whispered. Then. Through the smoke, she saw it. Rian dropped to 1 knee. Breathing hard, shield shattered. Sword nearly slipping from his bloody hand. 3 attackers closed in on him. And the queen realized, if she didn't act soon, the human who stayed for her would die for her. The attackers closed in. 3 of them now, larger than Rian, moving with deadly precision. Each step they took made the balcony shake, dust falling like tiny gray snowflakes. Queen Serenia pressed her back against the wall, trembling, eyes wide, but she stayed silent. She could not bear to speak. To speak might break the fragile courage she clung to, both for herself and for the human in front of her. Rian's chest burned from exertion. His armor was dented, shield ruined, and a deep cut ran across his arm. Pain stabbed him with every movement. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the blood streaming from his forehead. Yet still, he did not falter. The first attacker lunged, knife slicing through the air. Rian blocked with the remains of his sword, the metal sparking as it met the glowing blade. He pushed forward, driving the enemy back a step. Then the second attacker swung, a long staff glowing with green energy. Rian ducked just in time, feeling the air ripple above him as the weapon passed. He gritted his teeth. He could not let them near the queen, not 1 step. Not 1 inch. The third attacker circled him like a predator, knife in hand, waiting for the perfect moment. Rian's mind worked faster than any human should be able to. He calculated, timed, dodged. Every move was precise, yet desperate. Every strike he delivered carried the weight of his determination and of his loyalty. Serenia watched, heart in her throat. She had seen warriors before, but never like this. The human before her fought not for honor, not for glory, but for her life. His courage was raw, almost reckless, yet it burned brighter than anything she had ever known. Rian, she whispered. Her voice trembled. Please. Survive. Rian caught her eyes for a moment, sweat and blood streaking his face, and gave a small, grim smile. I will, I promise. The attackers advanced again. This time, 2 lunged at the same moment, 1 from the left, 1 from the right. Rian twisted his body, deflecting one strike with his forearm while spinning to kick the second attacker away. The sound of snapping metal echoed through the courtyard. The queen winced, covering her ears, but she stayed close, following his every move. A fourth attacker appeared from the smoke, climbing quickly from the far edge. Rian's heart sank. How many more? He was already exhausted. Pain flared in his leg from a twisted ankle, but he could not stop. Not now. He grabbed a broken piece of railing, jagged and heavy, and swung it like a club. The attacker who had appeared first stumbled backward, surprise flashing in his mechanical eyes. That moment was enough. Rian ducked under the next strike, spinning and driving the railing into the second attacker's chest. Sparks flew, and the man fell with a grunt. Sliding toward the edge of the balcony, two remained. They exchanged glances, then lunged at him together. Rian gritted his teeth, taking a deep breath. He moved like a whirlwind, dodging, striking, blocking, countering. Each motion was precise, flowing like water. Yet each strike carried the desperation of someone who knew he could not afford a single mistake. The queen's hands gripped the wall behind her as she watched him. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Every second she spent watching him fight, her heart ached not for herself, but for the human who had risked everything for her. Finally, Rian saw an opening. One attacker overextended. With a swift, powerful motion, Rian thrust his jagged weapon into the attacker's side. The man fell backward, hitting the balcony with a heavy thud. The last attacker froze, uncertainty flashing across his face. Rian did not pause. He charged, taking a deep, controlled breath. With all his strength, he slammed the railing piece into the final attacker's head. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Silence fell. Dust settled around them like a gray fog. Rian's chest heaved. His arms shook from exhaustion. His armor was bent, his body battered and bleeding, but he had done it. The queen stepped forward slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. Her hands reached for him, trembling as they touched his shoulder. "Rian, you stayed," she whispered. Her voice broke, filled with awe, relief, and gratitude. "When everyone else ran, you stayed." Rian gave a small smile, barely able to speak through the pain. I told you. I'm not leaving you." For the first time, the queen truly saw the human in front of her, not as fragile. Not as small, not as strange, but as a force of courage, determination, and loyalty unlike anything her world had ever known. And in that moment, she knew that the galaxy itself could change because of him. Rian knelt on the cracked balcony. Sweat dripping from his brow, blood seeping from his wounds. His breathing was heavy, his arms shaking from the weight of battle. Yet his eyes remained fixed on Queen Serenia, who stood trembling a few feet behind him. She watched him with a mixture of fear and admiration, unsure whether to step forward or hide in the shadows. The attackers had fallen, but the smoke and chaos still filled the air. The courtyard below was in panic. Citizens screamed and ran, their voices blending with the alarms of the palace. Rian tried to stand, but his legs refused to hold him. He had fought with everything he had, and it had nearly cost him everything. Queen Serenia's gaze softened. Her hand reached out, trembling, to touch his shoulder. "Rian, why do you risk so much?" she whispered, voice almost breaking. "Why do you fight for me?" He looked up at her, bloodied and battered, yet his eyes were steady. "Because you are worth it," he said simply. "Because I promised. Because no one else stayed." Her eyes filled with tears. She had seen loyalty before, yes. She had watched her people follow her, and she had led armies. But this was different. One human, fragile, small, alone, had faced death not for glory, not for power, but for her, and something inside her stirred. A power she had never dared use, not in all her years of ruling. Rian tried to rise again, but another explosion shook the balcony. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a faint green light appeared at the edge of the smoke, a warning. New attackers were approaching. Rian winced, his body screaming in pain. He could not hold them off again. Not alone. The queen's hands glowed faintly. She had always hidden her strength, her royal gift, deep inside herself. But now, seeing the human who had given everything for her, she could not hold back. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder. The light from her hands spread, weaving intricate patterns in the air, glowing like silver fire. Rian looked up in shock. "Your Majesty." The queen stepped forward, lifting her hands. Her voice rang out, strong, clear, and commanding. "Leave this place. No one will harm my protector." A sudden wave of energy erupted from her, crashing over the attackers who had dared to come closer. They stumbled, thrown backward by the force. Weapons flew from their hands. Some were knocked unconscious, some fled in terror. The air crackled with power, and Rian felt the heat of it brush across his face. He looked at her in awe. You did that?" he asked, still kneeling, his body shaking from exhaustion. She nodded, her eyes blazing with silver fire. "I will not let anyone harm you. Not today. Not ever." Her voice softened, and for a brief moment, she looked just like herself again, just Serenia, the queen. Standing over the man who had risked his life for her, Rian tried to rise, leaning on his shield. He was battered, bleeding, and barely able to stand. But he smiled weakly. I think I can manage a few more minutes," he joked, trying to lighten the tension. Though his voice was rough and raspy, the queen's lips curved in a small smile. And she placed her hands gently on his shoulders. "You do not have to fight alone anymore," she said softly. "I will fight with you." For the first time, Rian saw her not as a fragile monarch, but as a warrior, a queen willing to risk herself for the one who had saved her. Something shifted between them, a bond that went beyond words. Loyalty, courage, and gratitude intertwined into a single unbreakable connection. More attackers tried to approach, but now they hesitated. The queen's power filled the courtyard like a protective storm, and Rian stood beside her, sword in hand, shield raised. Together, human and alien queen became an unstoppable force. Rian's chest burned, every muscle screaming, but he felt hope surge through him. For the first time in hours, he did not feel alone. For the first time, he realized that they were more than protector and protected. They were a team. A unit bound by trust and courage. The attackers fell back, unwilling to challenge the combined might of human determination and alien power. And as the smoke began to clear, Rian looked at the queen, a weak but proud smile on his face. "You saved me," he said, voice barely audible. She shook her head gently, placing her hand over his heart. "No, Rian. You saved me first," she whispered. "And now we save each other. For the first time." In the midst of fire, chaos, and danger, the two of them stood together strong, unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment, Rian understood something he had never known before. Courage was not just fighting alone. Courage was standing together, protecting those you loved, no matter the cost. The courtyard of Varkos was a war zone. Smoke curled in gray spirals, mingling with the dust and debris from shattered stone and broken banners. The citizens had fled, screaming, their voices echoing like ghosts among the ruined walls. And yet, amidst the chaos, two figures remained: Rian Hale, the human, and Queen Serenia, the alien monarch whose power now blazed around her. Rian's body ached. Every muscle screamed with pain. His armor was battered, his shield broken, and blood dripped from several cuts along his face, arms, and legs. His breaths came in short, sharp gasps, but he did not falter. He would not. Not now. Not when the queen was still standing behind him. Serenia stood near him, her hands glowing with silver light, sending waves of energy that kept the remaining attackers at bay. Her face was pale, but her eyes shone with a fierce determination he had never seen before. She had learned something in these few hours. She could not fight like this forever. She was not invincible, but Rian. He had already given everything, and she could not let him fall. The attackers regrouped. They had not expected the queen's sudden display of power, and many were injured or unconscious. But some remained. They advanced cautiously, knives and blasters in hand, their glowing green armor flickering as if unsure whether they dared approach. Rian tightened his grip on his sword, shield raised, body trembling with exhaustion. "Stay behind me," he said to the queen, voice rough but steady. "I'll hold them. You protect yourself. You have to live." "No," she cried. "I fight with you. I won't let you die alone." He shook his head, but there was no time for argument. The attackers were almost upon them. Rian's chest tightened. His hands ached, his legs felt like lead. But he could not step back. He would not. This was his duty, his promise, his honor. The first attacker lunged. Rian met him with a swing of his sword, sparks flying as metal met metal. The force of the strike threw him off balance, and pain shot up his arm. Another attacker slashed at him from the side. Rian twisted, rolling with the strike, and landed in a crouch, shield raised just in time to block the deadly blow. Every movement was agony. Every breath burned his lungs. But still he fought. For the queen, for her people. For what was right. One of the attackers managed to push him toward the edge of the balcony. Rian's foot slipped on cracked stone. For a moment he teetered, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The queen gasped, reaching toward him with hands glowing brighter than ever. "Rian!" He steadied himself, gripping the balcony edge with one hand, shield in the other. He glanced at her briefly, saw the fear in her eyes, the hope she placed in him, and something surged inside him, a final, unstoppable surge of determination. I'm not leaving," he whispered to himself. The remaining attackers pressed their advantage. One leapt forward, aiming for a strike that could end him. Rian swung his sword with all the strength he had left. The attacker was knocked back, stumbling off balance. Another charge, another strike, he fought like a whirlwind. Body aching, bloodied, every motion fueled by raw determination. The queen saw the human before her. Beaten, bloody, nearly broken, and yet unstoppable. Her heart ached, and tears ran down her cheeks. She had never witnessed courage like this. Not among warriors. Not among kings. Not among her own elite guards who had fled. This was something different. Something extraordinary. Rian's sword clashed with the final attacker. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. The human stumbled, pain radiating through his entire body, but he drove forward with one last desperate surge. With a mighty push, he threw the attacker over the edge of the balcony. Silence fell. The enemies had been defeated. Rian sank to his knees, chest heaving, vision blurred with sweat, blood, and tears. He looked toward the queen. She rushed to his side, wrapping her hands around him. Her touch was warm, comforting, alive. "You stayed. You stayed for me," she whispered, voice shaking. "When everyone else ran. You stayed." Rian gave a small, exhausted smile. "I promised I would," he said, voice faint but steady. "No one leaves their queen behind. Not me." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The smoke settled. The courtyard was quiet except for the soft, distant cries of the fleeing citizens. And in that quiet, the queen and the human looked at each other. Bound by something stronger than words, loyalty, courage, and trust forged in the fire of battle. Rian had fought alone, against impossible odds. But because of him, the queen survived. Because of him, the palace of Varkos had a chance to see peace once more. And in that moment, Queen Serenia realized something she had never understood before. The human she had once doubted had not only stayed, he had stood unbroken when all others fled.